have three speakers today, three amazing local human beings. Let me read a little bit about who they are, and then I'm going to invite them to jump on with me, and we're going to have a conversation around underdog. In no particular order, Keyonna Chapman joins us. Keyonna is a creative designer and a mental health activist. She's a brand marketing specialist and the co-owner of the Denver-born brand Lawrence and Larimer Clothing Supply Company. Let's say hi to Keyonna.
Hello, everyone.
There we go. Next, we have Simone D. Ross. Simone is a Colorado native who grew up in Denver's Park Hill neighborhood. And the three speakers happen to be longtime buds. So that's going to be a fun dynamic for us. The serendipity of things when we're reaching out to interesting humans and we learn that everyone happens to know each other just speaks to it being the right fit. Simone's upbringing instilled in her a strong sense of the importance of community, of family, and building through investing in the success and dreams of one another. And then last but not least, Joslyn Ford Keel, and she also goes by Jofoki. She's a multi-genre singer-songwriter with Grammy nominations and a Dove Award win to her name as a contributing vocalist. She's a Denver native, and she earned her Bachelor's of Arts in Music, Technical Voice, specifically, from Fisk University, a historically Black college in Music City, USA, also known as Nashville, Tennessee. Why don't the three of you just make sure you're all situated and cozy, and if you're not on mute already for the rest of us, just make sure you're muted. We're going to sit attentively and explore some important topics. Quickly, Simone, say hi. Joslyn, say hi.
Greetings.
So lucky to have the three of you on. Thank you for spending, this morning with us for sure, but it took us a multiple of hours to just get situated. So that investment into this, I appreciate and the community appreciates, because time is weird these days, and it seems to be.
What is time?
Yeah, what does this all mean? Let me shift over quickly, and I want to pose a couple of questions just to get us going. And by way of it, you can share a little bit of your vantage point on the world. Tell us a bit about what you do professionally in more depth, and how that reveals certain insights about the topic underdog. But maybe to kick it off, tell us for each of you, tell us a time when you've seen yourself as an underdog, and then if that allowed you to propel you forward in any way, what did it teach you and how did it propel you forward?
Who's going first?
Take it away, Keyonna.
All right. I can say a time that I felt like an underdog. I don't know. I mean, I guess let's preface like how we're using underdog first and foremost. Creatively, I've never really necessarily seen myself as an actual underdog. There may have been circumstances where I might have been put in a weird position. For instance, I used to work for a really large entertainment company here in Colorado. And one of the questions posed to me from a senior person was, how did you get this job? And for me, that automatically set a tone of, should you really be here? And because you are here, how are you here? And so that for me made it, it made it adamant for me to show up and show out every freaking time I entered the boardroom. No, this cannot happen. Sorry, I have a 7-year-old. But anyhow, yeah, so every time I walk into the boardroom with our executives, it was, my voice had to be known. I had to show my voice. I had to make sure that everyone knew my name, Keyonna Chapman, and respected the voice that I had and what I brought to the table, because I didn't know anyone at that company. I did not get in through, having an uncle or aunt or a father sitting at the top. I got in because my credentials were there and I was a solid human being. So that would be one instance I would say that I would be considered to have been an underdog in a room, but not necessarily something that prevented me from being who I am. So
Yeah, baby.
How did it help you ultimately think about propelling forward, or navigating forward? Did it light a fire in you in a certain way?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, going into the room every single time, you have to go in with your head held high. You have to go in being able to answer the hard questions, always being a step ahead of everyone else, doing your homework, and really, again, just making sure that people knew why you were there, or in particular me, why I was there, what I had to offer. So I was always on top of everything, always a step ahead. I'm always the person who doesn't necessarily ask for help in the midst of struggles. It's like, no, I got to figure this out, and I'm going to go forward and do what I have to do to make sure that my name is known and people recognize me, whether it's passing in the hallway or it's from a project that I led. Every person that connected with me in that aspect learned something, took something away from me. So yeah, definitely lit a fire. And I think I go into every situation with that same mentality, is what can I bring to the table, and how can people leave with something from me, take something away from me in a positive aspect, and be inspired by whatever it is that we're working on, no matter what the project is or was.
I'll do that. Awesome. Simone, do you want to tell us a little bit about your impression of underdog and your experience with it?
Yeah. Like my enlightened self as an adult, I would say that a lot of what goes into being an underdog or viewing yourself as an underdog is these internal narratives we tell ourselves, right? Like, I feel like we all the time are telling ourselves these narratives about ourselves. Oftentimes it stems from like the point at which you realized you were different. And so I remember growing up, I grew up in a single parent household. And when I was in elementary school, kind of my first time and kind of even feeling that funny tinge of being an underdog was when I realized that most all of my friends had two parent households. And I was like, whoa, this is something that makes me different and makes me poke out. And so that kind of was the beginning of those narratives we tell ourselves every day, because everybody has a funky narrative. Either you're too tall, you're too short, you don't have this, you wish you had that. And sometimes that narrative can just become this white noise that kind of tells you that you're an underdog. And so I've definitely felt like I was an underdog in picking out what made me feel different. So it kind of started from that moment. And then as I progressed and grew, I found that my biggest thing to compensate for having those feelings of being an underdog was to kind of enjoy that feeling of being underestimated because of the one funky thing that made me different in the narrative I was telling myself. And so it started off with you're an underdog because you come from a single parent household, fairly low income, but it was like, nope, I have something to prove. And so continue to underestimate me, and I'll prove that somebody can, be highly successful who comes from a single parent, low income household. When I moved into the corporate space, I was continually underestimated. I used to be young, and so I was young, occupying a C-suite role at large companies. Came off fairly unassuming, and so people would always underestimate the value that I would bring. And so I would use that to my advantage, actually. Like, I would use that narrative I was telling myself and what I assumed people would think about me. I actually started to kind of pivot and say, if these things make me an underdog, perhaps I can use them to be more successful, and to be a surprise to people. And so that's kind of my underdog story, is just really understanding that white noise and those narratives that I was telling myself and feeding myself, and pivoting from that to hopefully surprise pleasantly everybody around me. But what I did learn is you should always bet on the underdog. You should always bet on the underdog, whether it's the Super Bowl, whether it's a hiring decision, always bet on us.
Yeah, I love that your daughter's snuggling on you, by the way, right now, because I was curious when in your single family household, you know, to feel to feel the underdogness of that situation, or to at least the perception of it, that's one thing. But then to still persevere through it. Where were you afforded that perspective as a young person to feel it, but then also move through it? Who equipped you with that?
You know, I think conceptually too, with underdogs, you sometimes don't have a choice, right? Because underdogs get this chip on their shoulder, and you kind of have to balance that, because you can't go through life with a chip on your shoulder, because it oftentimes can cause you to show up and live and, you know, let this narrative overtake your life. But that chip on your shoulder can also be this amazing propulsion to say, you know what, like, I'm getting mad at this situation, so I'm going to prove all of this wrong. I'm going to take all these statistics and throw them in the trash and prove all of those things wrong. And so for me, I had a chip on my shoulder in a healthy way. It wasn't a thing that like made me this person that was shrewd, but I definitely used that chip on my shoulder from feeling like an underdog as a propulsion method.
Awesome. Simone, do you want to introduce your daughter real quick?
This is my little sunshine, Zoe Monroe. Hi.
Thanks for joining us, Zoe. How's your morning starting off?
Good.
Awesome. Give your mom a big high five for being awesome, okay? All right. All right, let me make sure we give Joslyn a little bit of attention. Simone, thank you for sharing those perspectives. Joslyn, how are you? Tell us a little bit about your experience thinking about or feeling as you might have been the underdog, and how that's led you to where you are today.
Well, first, I have to say this because we are all the same age. We actually graduated high school together. So Simone said she used to be young. Fam, I'm still young.
I completely agree with you, Joslyn. I was going to say the same thing. I just didn't want to cut her off.
No, seriously. I'm going to echo Keyonna for the most part. And we discussed a little bit of this on IG the other day, Dave. I don't largely view myself as an underdog. There have been situations that I've found myself in where I've had to strive harder, but I still never, ever considered myself to be that. And I think it is because of my upbringing. And I have a very, very strong support system in family and family. You know, there's a joke that goes around, I love you like a play cousin. That's a huge thing in the, I don't know what just happened. Is it me?
No, I might have thrown you off because I realized the screen was still sharing the slide, and I wanted to give people more
Okay,
real estate.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that.
But I am, my support system is huge, and I have plenty of play cousins and aunties and uncles and so on and so forth, including my two co-guests. And we, like, since we were small children, we were empowered and told, you can do anything if you just put your mind to it. And we were that generation, you know, the early 80s babies that were told, you know, if you just apply yourself, if you are truly passionate about something and constantly do your best, your very best that day, then you will succeed. And so I've always had that in my mind. Of course, being in the entertainment industry and your looks being a part of that, there have been times where I have felt like I am, I really don't like the term underdog. But for lack of better terminology right now, I have felt like the underdog because I am a Black woman with natural hair, and I've been a thickums. That's another something that we say in the Black community. You know, you're thick, and that body positivity is just coming around. That's just happening within like the last 10 years or so. And even now, you know, there's still more hateful things under Lizzo's videos than there are. And so dealing with image, dealing with self-esteem, and not applying that to, not internalizing what people say about you based on their prejudices about how you look.
Mm-hmm.
That has been, that is an ongoing battle. It is an ongoing battle for me. And I will, I'll be honest in saying that there are days I wake up and I'm like, I am so fine. Look at all of this. And then there are days where I'm like, look at all of this. Yeah, you know.
Joslyn, I think you just said something really super important though, is that the term underdog is not necessarily a term that we carry on ourselves. It is something that other people pin on us.
Absolutely.
And I think that is really, really important for everyone to understand, because we all too often carry the weight of other people's thoughts and stereotypes about who we are and what we represent. And I think that is the most important piece here when we talk about the word underdog, right?
Absolutely. Because underdog, by definition, it implies injury or infirmity.
Yeah.
And the things that make the things in other folks' eyes, from other people's perceptions, that make me less than, to me, are not injuries, or not infirmities, or not problems. There's nothing wrong with me. I am a Black woman and I'm proud of it. I am. I'm saying it loud with my Lemon Glamour shirt, shameless plug. But there is nothing wrong with being Black, period. There's nothing wrong with being a woman, period. There's nothing wrong with being a woman in leadership, period.
Right.
So, we have to sort of redefine these monikers put on people.
Right.
Because again, I don't know that I'm an underdog. There are definitely obstacles that I've had to face and continue to have to face. Another, for instance, my father is a retired musician. 20 years ago, up until 20 years ago, his 40-year career was epic, and he got ill in 2000, and so was forced into retirement. Many people would say that anything that I got professionally, now mind you, I started working professionally at 13 on the Denver scene. Many people would say that it was nepotism, the reason I was getting these professional gigs. And time and place, yes, you know, and there were a lot of people who would say, oh yeah, that's Joe Keel's daughter, or that's Winston Ford's niece, or that's Jennifer Ford Keel's daughter. But I was capable. And that actually has been something, even now, people will say, oh yeah, well, you know, that's Joe Keel's daughter. And I work hard and I am capable of the job. So that's, you know, another something or obstacle that I've had to surmount, but I don't know that it's, again, underdog.
See, I think it goes back though to narratives, right? Because is America really a meritocracy? The answer would be a resounding no. And so there's actually nothing wrong with nepotism, but it just goes back to some of the narratives we tell ourselves. I know as a woman of color, I've carried this really wrong mantra that I have to do it all by myself. I have to be all things to all people at all times. And that help is something that is bad because I have to be this, whatever the hell strong Black woman is, which is just this false, unhealthy narrative that I think that I've put on myself. I will say that I think sometimes society is like, they're Black women.
Right.
They can take it. Let's just throw it at them and they can carry it. And it's such a heavy weight. But, you know, when I have these conversations in different circles, I've heard people proudly say like, hey, my dad is the CEO of this company and I got my job because of him. And they see it as legacy, not nepotism.
Right.
And so when we talk about nomenclature, it's like, you know what? Let's maybe change the nomenclature. Maybe we change the nomenclature of underdog. Let's change the nomenclature of nepotism. Is it nepotism? Or is it you're carrying out a legacy and walking in the path that's rightfully yours? And I think just we as a culture just get it so incredibly twisted. And I think that's a part of that whole underdog thing. I think especially as Black women, because we feel that we have to be these invincible superheroes who can't feel, who can't be vulnerable, who can't say no, and who have to just take it. It's like, give me, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry. I will reconstruct them, fix them, resurrect them, and make it better. The dope thing is that we do it.
And it's crazy, right? It's insane that we do it. That's a problem. Yeah.
It is. It's toxic.
It's so toxic. I realized that a couple of years ago when my grandmother was dying and I was running a business, working full time, trying to visit her consistently. And I had, for the very first time, an anxiety attack. And I had no clue what it was because I was carrying the weight, as you say, Simone, like you were carrying so much. There's so much to do and you keep going and you go and you go and you go. And then you're like, whoa, I need to stop and take a breath and check myself mentally, physically, spiritually. Everything has to pause really fast. And the sad part is we wait until we get to that point to stop and check in on ourselves as women, Black women. I mean, like we carry so much. So we got to fix that.
Yeah, I feel like you all at some point, you have that fuck that. Like I call it the fuck this moment.
Yes.
I had my fuck this moment in 2019. I left my marriage of 12 years, which was probably seemingly one of the most safe things that everybody was like, oh my God, you have the perfect, whatever the hell. So
again, someone else pinned on you.
And it was, again, other narrative someone else pinned on me. So I left my marriage of 12 years. I left the home that I'd invested in and created and worked hard to essentially have nothing and be homeless. I left my job, my corporate job that I'd had for 15 years. I'd actually been laid off for it, but it was God's way of kind of removing all that stuff. And so I found myself in, I think, April of 2019, a divorced, unemployed, single mother of two with no clue how I was going to create a life for myself. And so I had to literally erase everything from my life and start again in pursuit of what I was created to create and what I was created to become. And it was really rooted in needing like that complete and total cleanse of not being everything to everyone, actually demanding reciprocity in love and in life, and actually seeking like what true fulfillment looks like. And I think that that's the beauty of being a creative. And I can't wait for us to talk about how we're in our own special ways. But I think that that's the beauty in having and giving yourself the freedom to create and carrying that chip on your shoulder of don't believe me, just watch, and just going out and getting it. And so that was probably the most transformative thing to me ever when I left the entire life that I knew and just really had to depend on myself and my boundaries. I heard somebody say boundaries, 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 but sometimes it takes a minute to create those. So in exiting and leaving an entire life that was seemingly perfect, I actually have been afforded the freedom to create the life that I truly believe God designed me to live.
heard all that. I love
Yeah.
it. Can we maybe expand a bit then and think about, I want to get to the creativity aspect too, but if we zoom out and look at the world the way it is currently, and maybe how it's been historically, tell us a little bit about your professional backgrounds by telling us who are the underdogs in the world currently that your work is tied to, and how are you trying to propel people? That's not explicitly what you do for your work, and maybe it is, but just who do you see that needs our attention and our support, that may be in a position of underdog, that we all need to be mindful of? And then we'll get into what, as creatives, can we do about all this, or what's the potential as a creative, spirited human being. But
jump in on
yeah,
this.
you want to jump in, or Joslyn, go ahead.
Okay, it's I'll speak from the independent musician platform. There are many of us who are out here and really trying to not just be seen, but be afforded the same opportunities as our white counterparts. And so I lived in Nashville for 12 years for school, and then stayed a little bit after graduation. When I moved back to Denver, a lot of the music scene was gone, or the music scene that I knew was gone, the opportunity. And so a lot of my career here has been creating platforms, or just producing my own shows, or, coming up with whatever. And that's how I've sort of gained steam. And then, of course, having done a lot of background and vocal work for others elsewhere, with the information age and the interwebs, that has also helped. But there is a huge gaping hole in the independent local artist scene as it pertains to Black and Brown artists. The 5 Points, or the newly dubbed Rhino area, is it excludes us. And I grew up performing in 5 Points. The place that is now Cervantes is where I was crowned Miss Juneteenth 20 years ago, last month. It pales in comparison. It's very, very, very different. It's not that we fled or we're elsewhere and there is opportunity for us. There are very few venues that are regularly producing or willing to hire Black talent. And 2 of those businesses have gone out of business. Or 2 of the businesses that would have gone out of business in the last 2 months. And I will name drop Live at Jack's, formerly known as Jazz at Jack's, and the Casbah in Aurora. And it's frustrating when you are a creative artist, you are worthy of your hire, and you can't be hired, or you're not even given a chance to, say, produce your own thing, or you don't have angel investors, or you don't have the loan money. And a lot of folks just don't understand that you really do have to fund your own, you have to fund your own career. Most creatives have to fund their own careers. So my microphones, my computers, anything that I'm using to produce, anything that I'm using, my keyboards, my guitarist guitar, so on and so forth. We have to take care of our stuff. We have to have sound equipment because there's always some kind of, I mean, it's, you know, it's just astronomical. And then to invest like that in a career where you're dismissed or viewed as dispensable, it's frustrating. And I'm not sure if people notice it, but people like leave. People are leaving in mass, leaving Colorado to go to cities like, not Aurora, that's not it, like Atlanta, Atlanta and Chicago, where, you know, it's not just we love Black culture, but let's sideline the Black people in the Black culture. It's you know, we love Black culture and let us all participate in it. You know, let's not just completely forget about these kinds of artists. And so I keep seeing the tops of questions. How can we support? It's a good question. Maybe request at these venues. Dazzle has actually been doing a wonderful job. Dazzle Denver, a wonderful job of having these kind of conversations. For the last 8 weeks or so, they've been having conversations on race, mostly dealing with the music department. I'm a church girl, dealing with the music, the music industry in Colorado. But there are people who have songs that they need to record and just don't have the money to finish the recordings. A lot of money goes into those kinds of things, the post-production and, you know, and not having something coming out sounding like you recorded in your shower. You know, there's a level of professionalism that folks want to have. And there are several capable, beautiful artists right here in the city, in the Box State. I won't just say in the city, but that just don't have the resources to make this happen. And this is pre-COVID, so.
Right. There is a couple of people are pointing out, or looks like Tom's pointed out twice, there's at least resources specific to COVID available through the Small Business Association to get funding, which whether you absolutely needed it or not because of COVID struggles, it's available and could be a way to at least address this to a degree. But I'm wondering if anyone else out there listening, if you could type in the chat, any resources you know of, meaning maybe you are a resource that you could help with local artists, and that's your forte, to help, in this case, musicians get projects over the goal line. Either you know of, you know, access to funds or support or expertise. Maybe that's a good way for us to spread the love a bit. Simone, or?
Yeah, well, so Joslyn kind of gave like a perfect segue. I put in the chat that I think it's everybody's responsibility to demand inclusivity, to demand intersectionality. I mean, oftentimes I hear people remark to themselves like, oh, where's the BIPOC people? Where are the indigenous people of color, Black indigenous people of color? But they don't actually demand it. And so that's actually what I do in my day job is I work with corporations nationwide. My gift, my creative gift from a business perspective is I can operationalize anything, literally anything. If you want to start a dental company, if you want to start a light bulb making company, for some reason, God gifted me with the ability to get you to the implementation phase, and I can operationalize whatever the heck you need to be operationalized. And so I started my consulting firm because oftentimes people were doing things and operationalizing concepts, but they didn't include anybody else. They didn't elevate any other voices in the room. They didn't think about how this would impact any other intersections of people. And so when I'm consulting with my clients on operating their big idea, that's really what I do is I take like a holistic 360 view. I see it to the finish line and we implement with intersectionality at the core. And so I started doing this work because I spent the last 7 years of my corporate career reporting to the chief executive of the organizations that I was a part of. And within that time, I experienced some of the most horrific, bigoted, racist behavior. And I had nowhere to run. Like, where do you run? It's the CEO doing this. I was told I needed to smile more. I was patted on my head literally and just told that I was a pretty Barbie with nothing to offer the room. I was told to fire any H-1B status employee that I hired because this CEO did not like immigrants. And so on that day, it was another fuck this moment. Clearly, I have a lot of those in life. I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to dismantling that kind of corporate system. So whether it is working directly with boards of directors so they don't hire bigots to then be this toxic cancer for the whole organization, or whether it is working at the mid-level to dismantle these things operationally. That is what I do, and that is what my consulting firm does. I operationalize concepts, ensuring that they're intersectional and ensuring that they are void of supremacy culture that often is so incredibly ingrained. And then I have another firm that I am a co-founder of, and we go in directly and we train corporations. We call it courageous allyship, but we work one-on-one with teams and leaders. We do executive coaching on allyship. How can we be better to LGBTQ plus people? How can we just do better in general to create corporate cultures? And really that was rooted from my horrific experience. I had to literally go to therapy, EMDR. It's amazing. Everybody on this call, if you need to get the help, get the help. But also I hold space for understanding that it's just not even appropriate for your boss or the CEO of a company to put you in a place where you gotta sit on somebody's couch twice a week just to get through. And so that's why I do what I do, because I don't want my daughter, I don't want Keyonna's son, I don't want Joslyn's future quintuplets. I don't want any of your children on this phone call, any of the 84 people on this phone call. I don't want your kids to come home and tell a story from work that's either ripe with micro inequities, microaggressions, injustice at work. So that's what I do by day, and it's a lot, but I feel like I'm fighting the good fight, and I think we're helping a lot of businesses just in having aha moments about how they're operationalizing their businesses.
Very important professional work.
Yeah.
Keyonna, do you want to expand on that a bit, and then?
Sure, absolutely. I first want to say, like, I'm actually really honored to be able to sit here with you two ladies, like, in this moment. It just kind of reminds me of why we are doing what we're doing, why I'm doing what I am doing. I am the co-owner of Lawrence & Larimer, which is a clothing and supply company here in Denver. Myself, my partner, John Chapman IV, we built this company, started this company about, in 2015. Here comes Britt. I'm gonna have to turn that off. And we did it because of him, on top of just being creatives ourselves. Over the last 7 years, I was, as I stated, worked for a really large entertainment company and was extremely overworked and experienced a ton of microaggressions. And like I said, when my grandmother passed away 2 years ago, it was one of the hardest moments of my life. And I couldn't even bury her without being on phone calls with the CEOs because they needed an Excel document or a clip for a video. And it was so hard. So when they asked me to move to LA, I said, fuck this. No, give me my severance and I'm going to go on my very way. And so started putting more effort, a ton more effort into Lawrence & Larimer, the business. And it's so much more than a clothing store. And so the way in which we support our community is by using this space that we have. We started in 150 square feet. in 2015, literally a walk-in closet. And then in 2017, we moved to 400 square feet. Now we sit in 1,400 square foot space that allows us to not only be creatives ourselves and be our own boss and create our own schedules and not have to deal with somebody walking up to me and touching my natural curly hair and being, you know, asking me, how do you do your hair so many different ways? And but we offered this space to our creative friends to be able to come in and sing and be creative or DJ or host events. I've been doing a Therapy Thursdays because I noticed both me and my partner were experiencing a lot, you know, and we needed to be able to get a lot out. And then we realized in the Black community, we don't talk about our mental health state. And it's just always frowned upon. And so I wanted to be able to create a space that would allow people to get comfortable or get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so that is really, really important as we continue to build these communities, that we talk about, you know, some of the issues that we've experienced on a daily basis, whether it's in corporate America or in our personal lives or dealing with underdog situations. And this space allows that. Sometimes we tell people, we've had people come into our shop and just sit here all day long because they just needed to get away. And the environment allows that. It's just that when people come in, they're like, God, it's so amazing here. It's so like Woosah-like. And this is our space. It's our comfortable space where we don't judge. Anyone is welcome here. And we can talk about whatever is going on in your life. And so this space allows that. Just most recently, we had a mini music festival where we had 10 different performers between DJs and bands come in, and we actually raised money for Black Lives Matter Denver. We do a lot of different things. When COVID hit, we made this space so that we could have all of our creative friends come in and have people donate to the cause so that our friends and our creatives could continue to live and financially be stable. And so I think that's kind of, I think I'm answering your question. I'm trying to stay on the topic, but as creatives, we have to learn how to support each other in that way because we have resources. I think we just need to learn how to utilize our resources so that we can make it. Sometimes we are not going to be allowed in certain spaces, and that's fine. Those are not spaces that I actually want to be in. If you can't see the creativity and the greatness that is there, we will create our own space. Perfectly fine, but we won't be pushed out completely.
Right.
So
I've got a couple of questions to expand on, but
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Two things. There's a bunch of great resources being shared in the comments for everybody watching. I suspect you're seeing those, but just make sure you glance at those and if those are helpful for everybody. And then should we get a quick intro to DJ Coolwave?
Oh yeah. DJ Dopewave, yes.
This is
great. My son, he's 7 years old, DJ Dopewave. He actually started DJing in December. We got him, or Santa brought him some DJ equipment, and he's pretty phenomenal.
I just found out something amazing.
Tell us.
It is Lil Baby's birthday is on the same day as mine.
If you don't know who Lil Baby is, go Google it.
Yeah, it's an omen. It's an omen. Well, Keyonna, tell us a little bit more, and this is for all three of you, just as creatives, now shifting to how as a community, this specific one, meaning everyone on this specific call, Denver at large, but specifically the CreativeMornings or creative community of Denver, and then, you know, everyone in the world, what would you say to those who are creative spirited? What do we do to propel really any underdog, but perhaps the underdogs described in this conversation? As creatives, what's the mindset or the perspective that affords supporting and empathizing and then actually doing something about it? So what's the mindset? And then what are the practices that we can do as creatives? And then I might open it up to with time in mind after this, we'll just as a group come together and explore that further. But for the three speakers, what can we do from a mindset perspective and then a practical perspective to propel, support the underdogs in our world?
I think it's important to elevate voices, elevate concepts. I think we all have the power to do that, and whether it's the perceivable underdog, whether it's just somebody that you intuitively feel has an impactful or powerful position or story or mission. I think that it's so important to use your platform to elevate voices. And I think that we all have the power to do it within our realm of genius, because I truly believe in my heart that everybody on this call, everybody on planet Earth is a genius in their own right. I know I kind of sound like I'm on my Kanye, but I think everybody is a genius in their own right. And I think that, number one, you all owe it to yourselves to uncover that genius. And once you've uncovered it, if you haven't done it as of yet, is use your genius to elevate new voices, and create impact that way. And then just call stuff out. I thought it was so important when Joslyn was talking about there not being many venues that'll even hire Black artists. Call that out. Like I will go places and I will say, where's the Black people? Where's the Indigenous people? They exist. You can find them. So call it out. Because I know oftentimes we internalize that thinking, but nothing is going to change until you personally elevate voices and until you demand inclusivity. And even if you're artists and creatives, look at your work, look what you're doing. Are you elevating voices? Are your mediums elevating different cultures, different voices? If you're putting out graphic design, or if you're picking up a contract, that's a marketing contract, and you show your client an image and there are no diverse faces, or there's not a person in a wheelchair being pictured, I think it's your responsibility to normalize how completely amazing we are because we're so different. So I think that's what you have to do in whatever your area of genius is.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, am I on mute? No. Okay. I think that we have to, in order for us to be more inclusive, we have to get rid of fear first. I think all too often people are afraid of losing themselves in marketing or whatever it may be. I think we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and start being more inclusive. And if you don't have the voice to speak up for a diverse community, then find that voice and don't be afraid to find the voice. Get uncomfortable with speaking out when someone is not correct in their statements, or in your own creativity too. We have to be very honest with ourselves sometimes, and sometimes we too have to look into the mirror and ask ourselves the hard questions. What are you doing? How are you making change? How are you creating change in everything that you do? How are you impacting this world? What are you creatively saying and expressing to the world? And how does that motivate and help us change so that we can be a more inclusive and diverse place, so that our children are not necessarily, to Simone's point earlier, I don't want my son to have to be out here on, protesting because he's not being included, or because he's being gunned down, or what may have you, or because he's just not included and he doesn't see himself on the TV screen or in any of the creative down in Rhino, or what I call 5 Points still. But we just have to get uncomfortable. Just get uncomfortable, start speaking out, start holding yourself accountable, start holding your peers accountable for their actions. And when we are in these boardrooms with these CEOs, make people feel. You have to be compassionate. You have to feel again. And I think that we've gotten so used to living in our own bubbles, myself included, that we forget to open ourselves up to the rest of the world and look through the lens of someone else instead of our own. And put on your diverse goggles for a change and see the lens and see the life through people of color's eyes. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all feel, we eat, we think, we breathe like each and every one of us. We might breathe a little slower, we might breathe a little faster, but at the end of the day, we have to, as creatives, never give up trying to do what we love to do. And in the midst of doing that, we also have to get rid of fear. And I'll keep saying it over and over again, because I think fear is the driver of what is happening in the world right now and why we are not as diverse and we haven't grown as much as we should by 2020.
With that, with getting rid of fear, sometimes, you know, that is easier said than done.
Oh, totally.
But doing it scared, doing what you know is right, and do it even if you're fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And so this getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, these conversations for me are not comfortable. I sing. I definitely am. I can be a talker, but it is not comfortable when I am one of few who has created a position for myself on this scene, to expose that even some of the venues that I play only fool with me, you know, and even in that there have been knockdown dragouts. But being able to do things with your voice trembling still. 4 years ago, I was, not 4, it's been 3 years this week. I was able to perform at City Park Jazz. And for those who don't know, City Park Jazz is a huge thing. It is a Denver tradition. And it was actually founded and started by my dad in the 70s.
What?
He started it paying for it out of his own pocket. And his reasoning was he wanted to play somewhere where his parents and his children could come and see him. Because largely at that time, jazz was just nightclubs, you know, and it was late. And so he funded the first 10 years. He did it out of pocket, and then was approached by someone who said, well, can we make this a series and put him on the board and everything? And he sat on that board, helped, you know, get people or book. He helped with the booking and everything through 2000 before he took ill. And now his name has been scrubbed from that history.
Really?
Yeah. And so,
what's that all about?
I have no idea. I have no idea. He's nowhere to be found in the history of City Park Jazz. Anyhow, I performed. I didn't say any of this from the stage. I wasn't, you know, F you, City Park Jazz. No, I really was grateful. And I still am. That was a lifelong dream for me, because, you know, my daddy started that, and I grew up going to that. And I remember, of course, I wasn't born yet. My way older siblings were there for the beginnings of that. But I remember going, and he would play every 4th of July. And I remember going and even singing songs with him on that stage. And so for it to come full circle, and it to be my turn 3 years ago, it was beautiful. And at that performance was where I shared with about, I don't know how many people were out there, maybe let's just say 10 million, that it might as well have been 10 million people. I shared publicly for the first time that I am a suicide attempt survivor, and that I battle with depression and mental illness. And there were people who came up, you know, to thank me and, you know, say I too, and what have you. But in droves, I got email and text messages from people I knew, people I didn't know, reaching out on the business line, asking for help. And the majority of these people were those strong Black women that Simone was talking about. You know, people, and that Keyonna alluded to, people who have tapped out, and be it microaggressions, be it their families being scrubbed from history, be it, you know, not being able to book, being whatever it is, you know, it just, the colors of the rainbow became too much for these people as well. And so what I'm saying all this to say, I'm bringing this around and bringing it around, saying all this to say, it is so important for us to use our platforms to elevate these voices, but to be thoughtful and not get lost in the hurt of it all. Because had I just been angry that day, had I just focused on how hurt I feel that my father isn't mentioned in the history of this wonderful concert series, I could have missed out on a chance to really help people. And since then, we have been really helping people. We've been, connecting people, primarily Black people, but not just Black folks, but folks who are reaching out saying, hey, I need a therapist. Or, hey, do you know any resources? Have you heard of any grants? And then there are people who will reach out and say, hey, I have grant money for any Black women or Black children or whatever who need therapy, or anybody who needs some kind of trauma therapy, those kinds of things. That matters. And so even just knowing how to deal with your own healing, that lessens that underdogness, as David puts it, seeking help for yourself, seeking psychological, emotional, and spiritual healing is so valuable. I'm done. Yep, I'm gonna hit mute.
Before you do that, Joslyn, will you say your father's name, his full name, so we can all hear it? Let's honor him.
Full name is Joseph Francis Keel, known as Joe Keel, and Joe Keel and the Action Orchestra. Keyonna and JC actually did a shirt for me for his 75th birthday 2 years ago to honor his legacy when we came together with a band reunion. But it was Joe Keel and the Action Orchestra, and he's amazing. And if you look, their PBS did something on him, and 5 Points Jazz a few years ago. Yeah. We love him deep. That's right, Marshall. I love you too, Marshall.
Joseph Francis Keel. We're not going to forget that name. I'm sorry to hear that story, and it's important that you shared it. So I say, everyone who's now in the know, let's make sure that it doesn't go, it doesn't get completely lost. It's a shame. But I appreciate you sharing that. And by the way, being so vulnerable with all of us. This is the name of the game with this community. So that was a touching story. To be thoughtful of everyone's time, I just want to say thank you to the three speakers. Simone, thank you so much. Joslyn, thank you so much. Keyonna, thank you so much for spending your time this morning. That's it. Thank you so much for being here, everybody, and participating. And take yourself off mute if you can, and let's give our speakers a round of applause and gratitude and love. Thank you, Simone.
Great.
Thank you, Joslyn. Thank you, Keyonna.